Hi, this is Andy Musall with Fresh Source Farms. Today we're going to be comparing the Titan Fox Farms Coco Loco against Coast of Maine's Sprout Island Blend. Let's see what does better. Here at Fresh Source Farms, we've been growing microgreens for about 4.5 years, and the primary soil we've been using since day one was Fox Farm Coco Loco. We've had great success with it. We've tried other different soils before, but we've had all kinds of problems with those. They didn't have as much yield as Coco Loco, but we heard really good things about Sprout Island from Coast of Maine, from Mike Hicks from Itty Bitty Micro Farm. I'm going to put a link to his YouTube channel down in the bottom, so feel free to actually follow him. And basically our plan is that we're actually going to test these two against each other and see which one performs better. All right, so let's talk about the ingredients that are in each soil mix. So we'll start with the Fox Farms Coco Loco. It actually has a 50 to 60% mix of coco coir, aged forest products, perlite, and fertilizer. That's kind of broken down by some nitrogen, some phosphate, some potash, and calcium. And then the Coast of Maine actually has 70 to 80% mix of sphagnum peat moss, composted manure, fertilizer, and Kohlrabi, I'm not sure how you say that correctly. And it's also got nitrogen, phosphate, some potash, derived from composted poultry manure, lobster and crab shell, kelp meal, and earthworm castings. And yeah, looks like that's about it. It has some crab shell, all kinds of random things in this thing, but it seems like it's a lot of things that come out of the sea. Coast of Maine, imagine that. All right, and just some quick stats on the two different types of soil. I kind of read through all the instructions that were on the back and wrote down some important things that I seem to kind of find throughout. So both bags are exactly 2 cubic feet of soil. They both contain 56.6 liters of soil, which according to Coco Loco is the equivalent of 51.4 dry quarts of soil. Coco Loco comes from California. Coast of Maine obviously comes from Maine. Coco Loco is not organic, where Coast of Maine is actually OMRI listed as organic. So you can actually use it if you're running an organic farm. The weight, I guess, is about the same, 40 pounds versus about 45 pounds, so they're very close. But the big cool thing that I saw when I was reading through the Coast of Maine was that it actually has a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So if you're not happy with the soil, you can actually send it back, or whatever they do, I don't even know. But they actually will refund you your entire retail price that you paid, which is really cool. So they kind of back up their product, where Fox Farms, that I couldn't find on the bag anyway, I don't think they actually have that as one of their guarantees. So what you can't see is that we already planted a wide variety of actual plants to test between the two. I'll show you some kind of B-roll right about now, you can see what those look like. But ultimately, we use about 1.75 quarts of actual soil in each tray. So we're using Bootstrap Farmer shallow trays. The ones in green are going to be for Coast of Maine. The ones in purple are going to be for the Coco Loco from Fox Farm. And basically, we're using our same seed amounts that we would use normally for each. So if we're using 18 grams of seed for broccoli, we're going to use 18 grams of seed for broccoli on both trays, just to keep things nice and even. And when we stack them and put them under weight for germination, they're actually going to be stacked in the exact same order. So whatever's on the bottom is going to be on the bottom from both. Whatever's on the top is going to be on the top from both. So that way we can keep things really nice and even. I actually planted these with my daughter, and she either watered all of them or I watered all of them. So, because we have a little bit different biases as to how much water we put down. So we were trying to keep everything very scientific and very equal. So that was really the goal. So let's get into it. So first we're going to go ahead and add our soil to our Bootstrap Farmer trays. We're going to put the Fox Farm Coco Loco in the purple and the Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend in the green. All right, our hands are clean. Now we're going to go ahead and spread the soil by hand. Now this is the one that we've used many, many times. We're very familiar with how Coco Loco actually spreads. It's pretty easy. Sometimes we can get a bag that's actually a little bit wet. When we do, it's not terribly bad, but it definitely makes it a little bit tougher. So you want to try and make sure when you're buying bags of soil, try and get them indoors as much as you can. We'll go ahead and spread the Sprout Island. It's definitely noticeably softer. Feels a lot lighter It's a slightly lightly colored brown. Not by much though. All right, those are spread out about as good as we can do by hand. So now we're actually gonna bring in the Fresh Source Farms soil press that we actually have produced. We made this in-house. It's made of 100% food grade material and chemical resistant material as well, all the way down to the actual screws that are holding these handles on. So this is the version with the premium handles that have a nice rounded edge. They're really easy to use. These are for sale on our website. I'll put a link down in the description. All right, soil's nice and flat. Now we need to water. All right, so now we're ready to water. One of the things that we've recently learned, probably in the last 6 to 8 months, is that we actually changed this from mist mode to shower mode. When you're planting a couple hundred trays a week, it definitely saves you a lot of time. So you can see how fast that actually waters. We gave them both roughly the same amount of water. All right, so now we're ready to actually seed our trays. These 2 trays that we're actually going to do today are both going to be broccoli. We're going to use exactly 18 grams of broccoli seed for each one. So now that we're done spraying the seed, we're going to go ahead and mist each of the trays. This is where we actually put the hose on mist. So now these are going to germination for 3 days, and we'll see you then.
3 days later.
Okay, it's been 3 days. We planted 12 varieties, and just a reminder again that all the purple is Fox Farms Coco Loco, all the green is Coast of Maine's Sprout Island Blend. So right now we're going to actually get into the details of each grow that we did. We grew 12 different varieties. So basically we have them right next to each other. So the purple broccoli is right next to the green broccoli. Purple blend is right next to the green blend that we grow. The arugulas are right next to each other. So they're on the same shelf, same height. So they're basically trying to take away any possibility of room for error in there as best we can. And let's dive into how they look. All right, so we'll just go in alphabetical order. So first we'll start with Amaranth. This is one of the few crops that actually, when we take them out of germination, we put them into blackout. So let's take a look at how they look. This will be my first time seeing them because my team actually came in and did all this work and brought these out of blackout earlier today. We made sure we had the same person misting and watering the entire time. So that way we're keeping things as equal as we possibly can. So again, the one in green is going to be Coast of Maine. One in purple is going to be Fox Farms Coco Loco. So we'll take the lids off temporarily, take a look. Right off the bat, I can see that there's a lot more growth coming out of the Coast of Maine Sprout Island initially. You can see the germination is a lot stronger, the plants are a lot taller, so this is very interesting. So I'd say so far for Amaranth, which is the very first one we've looked at, it's clearly a win for Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend. Which, by the way, if you want to actually see how we wired up and built this shelf, we actually have a YouTube video that's available right on our channel. I'll put a link in the description, and I'll also put a little pop-up right up here. You can click on that to watch that video after this one's done. Yeah. All right, so next up in alphabetical order is going to be our arugula. This is one that we actually plant and put directly into blackout. We actually don't do any waiting at all for it. And it turns out so much better from what we can see. So again, the green is Coast of Maine, and the purple is Coco Loco. I would say upon initial inspection, Coco Loco does look a little bit taller overall. Seed hulls, I don't see too many on either side. The germination looks really good between the two of them. So I'd say this one's pretty close. If I had to pick a winner, I would probably say Coco Loco in this case for arugula. But again, we're only 3 days in, so we'll see what the rest of the planting looks like. All right, next up in alphabetical order is going to be basil. In this case, it's Genovese basil. So let's see how these guys look compared to each other. Now, this is one that we actually plant directly into the light, and we actually put lids on top. clear lids, so that way they're actually just humidity domes basically. So it contains the actual humidity on the inside. So these actually stay under light right from the beginning, so they actually don't get planted under weight or anything. So let's take a look and see. Pull these lids off, see how these guys look. Now keep in mind this is only 3 days in for basil. Germination for basil is usually about a week. So this will kind of give you an idea what they look like. So I will say the basil in the coast of Maine is definitely a little bit darker green so far. There's a lot more white on the actual Coco Loco side. I don't know if that's just a lot of root hairs that we're seeing or what it actually is, but there's clearly a difference between the two. So I would say germination-wise overall, I would give this win to Coco Loco, but the color actually is clearly better on the coast of Maine so far. All right, next up in our alphabetical list is actually a blend that we have that we call Brassica Blend. I didn't include it in the list towards the beginning of the video because it's just a mix of red acre cabbage, red Russian kale, and purple kohlrabi. So let's see how that one looks. And we just call this Brassica Blend for a lack of a better name. So as you can see, they're very similar. I would say the Coco Loco is a little bit shorter, a little less germination, just based on what I'm seeing at least initially. The Sprout Island is definitely taller for sure. Looks like better germination. So I would give the win for this one to Coast of Maine Sprout Island. Okay, next item in the list is broccoli. Most people grow this one, so this is definitely an important test for us to run. So let's see how they compare. Okay, so these are both pretty close as well. I would say seed hole wise, there's definitely a lot less seed holes left on the coast of Maine Sprout Island versus the Fox Farm Coco Loco. I would say the germination is about the same. The coast of Maine looks a little bit taller. So I would say just based on the seed holes and the height, I would give this one to Coast of Maine. All right, so next up is going to be cabbage. In this case, we're growing red acre cabbage. So let's see how they look. All right, so these are pretty close, I would say. The germination is almost identical, really. I don't see any clear difference between the two. I would say there's a tiny, tiny advantage towards Coco Loco, but it's so tiny that I really wouldn't call a winner necessarily in this particular race, just because it's so close. But you guys let me know in the comments what you think out of the red acre cabbage. Which one do you think looks better so far? We'll determine that as we go through the process. So next on our alphabetical list of competitors is cantaloupe. One of the few that we actually do grow on a heat mat every single time during germination especially. We keep the heat mat around 83 degrees roughly. So even though this whole rack that's behind me was literally disconnected from our rack set and wheeled over as is, the cantaloupe I brought over separately because we have those in a separate area where we run our heat mats. So we also keep those weighted for one additional day, but I'm still going to give you an idea at least what they look like on day 3 through germination. So we actually do germinate them for 4 days and we keep them under 15 pounds of weight. So let's see what they look like. Okay, so right off the bat, clear as day, there's better germination through the Coast of Maine Sprout Island blend. A lot more germination is happening, a lot less seed holes are still attached. They're clearly taller for sure, so they've definitely been growing quicker. So this is a clear and easy win for Coast of Maine Sprout Island blend. All right, next up on the list is actually celery. Now this is one that we grow for about 5 weeks, so it's not a fast microgreen, unfortunately, so you're probably not gonna see too much of a difference between these two at this stage, but we'll still take them off and show them to you what they look like. But ultimately, we actually plant these directly into a clear humidity dome as well and put them directly under the lights. So that, like basil, we do it very similarly. So let's take a look. So, and just like the basil, we actually mist the celery seeds every single day. We pick up the lid, mist inside, put the lid back down. We do that for about a week, and then we pull the lids off. So just as I'd expected, there's little to nothing happening yet. Celery does take about probably 5 to 7 days before you're even going to start seeing anything. There is no visual difference whatsoever at the moment. So it's pretty much a tie. All right, next up on the list is red Russian kale. So this is one we actually don't wait when we're growing it. So if you saw in the little B-roll that we had earlier in the video, you saw there was a stack and there was an extra kind of tray sitting on top. That was the kale. We do put an actual tray on top of it. We just don't weight it down. We find it actually prefers not to be weighted. But we've trial run both sides, and overall we just found a little bit better. So it's really not that big of a deal if you do weight your kale. It will still be fine. So let's see how they look. So I'd say right off the bat, there's clearly more root hairs in the Coco Loco, but it's really not quite as tall overall. There's a lot of uneven growth in the coast of Maine Sprout Island, at least from what I can see, where the Coco Loco looks more consistent. There's certain ones like this little guy right here is actually popping way up. There's a couple of them that are like that, which is a little interesting. So it's a little uneven growth. There's some seeds around the edge that actually didn't germinate on this edge and that edge. But I'd say overall, this is pretty close. It's kind of the height from the coast of Maine Sprout Island almost cancels out the lack of height on the Coco Loco, but at the same time, this one has less germination, so I'd probably call this overall a tie. They both won in different categories. All right, next up in the list is going to be purple kohlrabi. Let's take a look. Okay, so right off the bat, height-wise, they're about the same. I feel like the coast of Maine Sprout Island germination is actually looking a lot better, though, in comparison to the two. And it's really hard to tell when I'm looking at them from this angle, but it does look like the coast of Maine is taller by a little bit. So I would say overall so far, I would give the win to coast of Maine Sprout Island. All right, next up in the list is going to be radish, which we grow basically Rambo radish, as they call it, but it's also known as red radish or purple radish, just depends on where you're coming from. So let's see how those come out. All right, so I'd say at initial first glance, the Sprout Island is definitely a little bit taller. There's a little more germination overall, just based on initial looks. They're very, very close in size, but the Sprout Island definitely is a little bit taller. And I think the germination is a little bit better from what I'm seeing, at least initially. So I would say this is a win to Sprout Island. All right, next up on the list is going to be the spicy salad mix from True Leaf Market. One of the few seeds that we still buy from them. We shop most of our seeds from either Mums or Greener Harvest as a whole, but we do really like that blend from True Leaf Market. So let's see how they look. Okay, this one is very close. Very close. They're almost exactly the same height. I would say the actual germination is more or less identical. It might be slightly less in the coast of Maine, just through this section here, but also in this section here on the Coco Loco is also a little bit light on germination as well. So, but I would definitely call this an absolute tie so far. They are literally exactly the same. So let me know which of these two you would pick in the comments. So that's the end of our germination test. Keep in mind, it's only been 3 days, so these still have to grow through their whole entire life cycle, all the way out to 5 weeks. So we will keep you updated as we go through the process and make sure we have different measurements that we take at each step. So we'll probably save the next one until 7 days in. So we'll start to see some pretty significant differences. So we'll go from 3 days where we are now to 7 days, then probably to 14 days. And then we'll start doing harvesting at that point for the 14-day crops. And then we'll go to 21 days for the basil and then 35 days for the celery. And you'll get the full picture from start to finish. Be a really good comparison between the two. And in the meantime, we'll keep doing what we do, and we'll see you again in 4 days. All right, so we're back here at day 7 of our competition of Fox Farm Coco Loco versus Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend. The crops look really good. Everything's growing along really well. So let's do a one-on-one comparison now that we're through germination. Just to kind of give some idea, these things have been in the light for 14 hours every single day, from basically 3 a.m. till about 5 p.m. every day. And they're sitting literally right next to each other on the shelf. So the broccolis are next to each other. They've been on the same shelf the entire time since we started the experiment to keep things as simple as possible. So let's get started and go through them. All right, so first on the list is going to be Amaranth. Let's see how the Amaranth compares. Again, the Fox Farms is in purple, and the Coast of Maine is in green. So these two, there's actually a little bit of something else, appears to be arugula in my Amaranth and the Coast of Maine. So we must have spilled some seed over there by accident. But the Coast of Maine is clearly taller by a lot. The leaves are actually a little bit more green, not quite as dark red as the Coco Loco is so far. It seems to be fuller on the Coast of Maine side, just by what I'm seeing, because I can see a lot of the soil through the actual canopy on this one and not so much on the Coast of Maine. So I would say the Coast of Maine has definitely taken the Amaranth win so far. Of course, we still have about another week to go before these are going to get harvested, so we'll see what it looks like at that time. All right, next up on the list is going to be arugula. Let's see how they compare. So Fox Farms in purple, Coast of Maine in green. I would say height-wise, they're almost exactly the same. I feel like the Coast of Maine as a whole is a little bit greener. There's a little bit more yellow still in the Coco Loco. I do have one dead spot that's starting to kind of form in here in the arugula in the Coast of Maine, but that's probably more a watering issue than it is a soil issue. I would say the leaves on the Coast of Maine are certainly bigger on average, just from looking at the two next to each other. So I think other than that one dead spot, it looks like the Coast of Maine has just barely squeaked out a win with the arugula. All right, next on the list is going to be broccoli. Let's take a look. Okay, right off the bat, I would say the Coco Loco is definitely taller. It's very obvious that it's taller. The canopy is not quite as uniform, where the Coast of Maine is really kind of flat. The canopy is kind of curved a little bit more with the Coco Loco. I'm also seeing some moisture towards the top on the Coast of Maine as well, which could potentially mean that down inside of this area is going to be some pretty not so fun stuff. So that's definitely one negative, I would say. Otherwise, the canopy looks exactly the same. I would say the Coco Loco, the leaves on average, there's bigger leaves on here than there are on the Coast of Maine, but they look about the same leaf size, but there's definitely some larger individual leaves that I'm seeing. So I would give this win so far to Coco Loco. All right, next on the list is going to be our Brassica Blend that we created in-house. Again, it's a mix of cabbage, kale, and kohlrabi. So let's see how they compare. right, so I would say they're almost the same height. Coco Loco is a tiny bit taller. It also seems to have a more uniform height where the Coast of Maine kind of tailors off towards the back of this tray a little bit. I'm seeing a little bit of moisture in the canopy on both to a certain extent. There's some through here in the Coco Loco, some through here with the Coast of Maine. The leaves on the Coco Loco, I would say, are bigger on average, at least from what I'm seeing from first glance. So I would probably, at least at the moment, give this win to Coco Loco. All right, next up is Red Russian Kale. Let's see how they compare. Again, Fox Farms is in purple, Coast of Maine is in green. So initially, height-wise, I would say Coast of Maine, well, maybe not. They're about almost exactly the same. But just like before, the Fox Farm seems to be a more uniform growth. The Coast of Maine kind of tends to tailor off towards the rear of the tray. I also have kind of a wet canopy right here, but I also have a little bit of that here, but there's way more of it in the Coast of Maine. And leaf size wise, I'd say they're about the same. Coco Loco may have a slight advantage. They might be a little bit bigger. The canopy seems to be a little bit fuller on this one as well. So I would say just barely Coco Loco's got the win on this one. All right, next up is Red Acre Cabbage. Let's check it out. Okay, so height-wise, for certain, Coast of Maine has that win. It's a good probably half-inch taller on average. It definitely has a more uniform look to it where the Coco Loco's got a couple dips and some weird spots. I can definitely see into the soil more in certain areas on the Coco Loco than the Coast of Maine, so it's definitely filled out better. I think like color uniformity, the Coast of Maine is a little bit better. This one's a little bit more splotchy. There's definitely more purple and green through here, and there's a lot more green through the Coco Loco. So I would probably give this win to the Coast of Maine. All right, so next up is going to be Rambo Radish. Let's take a look. Okay, so height-wise, they're almost exactly the same. I don't see really any major difference. I would say overall, the height growth across the whole canopy on Coast of Maine is a little bit more uniform. There's a little more purple in the Coco Loco. Not by much though, but there's definitely a noticeable difference of purple throughout. There's more of a mix of greens and purples through the Coast of Maine. There's a couple spots that I can see are starting to dry out, and we haven't watered yet today. It's early in the morning still. It's about 10:35 in the morning. But there's a couple spots that I'm actually seeing that are drying out. It's definitely dried out more on the Coast of Maine. Whether that means anything or not, probably not. I'm looking for overall quality of everything. I would say the leaves are probably bigger on the Coast of Maine on average, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing, depends on what your chef is looking for. But keep in mind, these are only a week old, so these could actually be harvested today, technically. We're gonna push them out to 10 days just to see what the harvest weights look like. And then we'll actually harvest and film that as well. But this is just kind of a general idea. But I would say in this case, the winner, in my opinion, just for color, for size, and for the size of the leaves is gonna be the Coast of Maine. All right, next up is going to be Spicy Salad Mix. So, height-wise, they're almost exactly the same. I'd say there might be a slight advantage to Coast of Maine, just barely. The canopy is a little more even. Coco Loco has a little bit of a dip right through the center here, but that's really it. Otherwise, I'd say they're pretty much identical height-wise. Size of the leaves, they're about the same. I'd say on average, the Coco Loco may be slightly bigger. There's no real dead spots that I can see. Germination looks really good. I have to call this a tie. These are literally identical. There's almost no difference whatsoever. If I had to give a slight advantage, it would be the coast of Maine, but it's not enough to where I would want to call that as a win. So this is a tie. All right, next up is going to be purple kohlrabi. Let's have a look. These canopies both look really, really, really thick. Nice and solid. Height-wise, they're almost the same. Coco Loco by a hair is just a little bit taller. Same thing though that has been in a lot of them where the coast of Maine, the canopy is really, really even. The Coco Loco actually dips a little bit right here and right here. Not so bad to where I would have an issue with that. It still looks really good. Color-wise, they both look really good. There's no real obvious difference. You know, there's definitely a good mix of purples and greens in both. So other than that, I don't really see much visually different. So if I had to give a win, I would say it was Coco Loco, but I think it's so close that I would call this a tie as well. All right, so next up on the list is going to be Cantaloupe. So Cantaloupe is a 10-day crop for us. These guys are almost ready to be harvested. They both look really good. So height-wise, I would say Coco Loco probably has the win there, almost guaranteed. It's a lot more kind of hilled up in the middle, so I think that's why it's getting that win, where these are a lot more consistent height-wise. There's definitely a lot less seed holes on the coast of Maine versus the Coco Loco. I see a lot more seed holes on there. There's a couple spots where it didn't germinate really well around the edges for the Coco Loco, where I can't see anything like that in the coast of Maine. So even though the Coco Loco's got it height-wise, I feel like the germination is definitely better, and we'll see if that comes out in harvest weights, if that's actually the case. So technically we should get more weight out of this, even if it's shorter, because we're getting more actual physical plants out of that versus the Coco Loco. So I would probably, mainly because the Coco Loco is taller, but I think the coast of Maine actually germinated better, I'd probably call this a tie. All right, next on the list is going to be Genovese Basil. And these are actually ready to come out of their humidity domes today. So I'll be looking at these for the first time without the domes. So we'll take these guys off, set them off to the side here. All right, so height-wise, they're so short still, which is typical for basil at a week old. I would say if anything, the coast of Maine has a slight advantage there. It seems like germination's a little bit stronger in the coast of Maine as well. There's definitely some thick spots where I can see a lot of the soil in the Coco Loco, but I can't see nearly as much in the coast of Maine. The outer edges on both are definitely where germination failed the most, especially on the coast of Maine. It's a little more evident, especially on this side and this side. But I think like size of the leaves, size of the growth, the germination, everything else looks really good on the coast of Maine, so I'm going to have to give them the win on this one. All right, next on the list is going to be celery. These are also still under dome, and they'll probably be under dome for at least another week. Again, Fox Farms Coco Loco in purple. Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend in green. So with these, there's not a whole lot to look at. They're still very, very, very young. But I can see a clear as day advantage to the coast of Maine with germination. There's way more plants that are actually germinating already. They're all very, very small. Hopefully you can see them in the video that's on the screen right now. But they're very, very, very tiny. But there's clearly more that have popped up on the coast of Maine than the Coco Loco. So I got to give this win to coast of Maine. So that concludes our 7-day check-in of Fox Farms Coco Loco versus Coast of Maine Sprout Island. Next up is going to be at day 10 of our grow, where we're going to harvest our radish and our broccoli and our cantaloupe. So that'll be coming up right after this.
3 days later.
All right, so today is an exciting day. It's day 10 of our grow competition between Fox Farm Coco Loco and Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend. So today we're going to be harvesting 3 crops that we plant for 10 days. We have cantaloupe at the top, we have Rambo radish, and then we have broccoli as well. So let's get into it and see what our weights look like. So during the entire process, you're going to be able to see the weights right on screen coming from our scale here that we've got set up using a stainless steel bowl and a produce bag. We're going to harvest everything right into those bags so you can see the weights between each one. So let's start with cantaloupe. Now remember, the purple is Fox Farm's Coco Loco, and the green is going to be Coast of Maine Sprout Island. And if you're interested in gloves like these, I'll put links in the description. I'll also put a link in the description to the Shun 6-inch chef knives that we use here at the farm. These things are incredibly sharp. So let's go ahead and start harvesting. So the Coco Loco we're very used to using. We've been using it for a long, long time. We usually roughly get about 14 ounces to a pound of cantaloupe per tray. I'm not going to spend the time taking all the seed holes off today because it's not what this is about, but I will show you some footage of the seed holes that we actually pulled off the top before we bothered cutting anything apart, so you can see what the difference was as far as what was left on top of the tray. There was definitely more seed holes on top of the Fox Farm Coco Loco than there was on top of the Sprout Island. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing. It could just be this particular batch just happened to play out that way. I'm sure what everybody's interested in more is what the actual harvest weights are in the end. All right, I'd say that's pretty well cleaned off. We'll get these last little couple pieces. And our final weight looks like 14.94, so it was right in the range of where I thought it would be. So we'll move this one off to the side here, and we'll grab the Coast of Maine cantaloupe. So we know we have 14.94, so I'm going to go ahead and zero this out. So this will start now at 0, so anything we add to this bag is going to be added as weight. So that's pretty well good enough. I'll move this tray out of the way here, stack it on top of the other one, throw in a couple of little extras, and it's like we're at 15.3. So I don't know what that percentage is off the top of my head increase, but I'll put it up on the screen right here. Not significant, so much so that I would expect it to be like, wow, this is a clear significant win to Coast of Maine, but Coast of Maine did come out a little bit heavier at 15.3 versus 14.94. Okay, so let's take a look at the difference in the root structures for the cantaloupe. Just out of curiosity, it's always one good thing to check. So I'm just gonna kind of grab a section in the corner and see if I can pull it up. So the Fox Farms, wow. That's a significant difference. See if I can even get this one to come up in one chunk here. I don't think I've ever seen cantaloupe with that much of a root structure before. So on my right-hand side, I guess it'd be your left, in the green, we've got Coast of Maine Sprout Island, clearly a huge win in the root structure world. It's also a solid mat. I could probably pick this whole thing right up out. Yep, just like that. So this, I don't feel like I could do that. I feel like it would fall apart. I might be able to do it, but it's definitely a little bit more crumbly. I'll just turn it right upside down and make things a little easier. but there's definitely a significant advantage in the root structure to the coast of Maine over the Coco Loco. So in between each harvest, we're going to clean and sanitize both the stainless steel table and our harvesting knives. So if you want to actually learn how we clean our stainless steel tables, feel free to click on the pop-up banner that's coming up here, and it'll show you how we actually do it here at Fresh Source Farms. All right, so next up on the harvest list is going to be Rambo radish. Again, purple is Coco Loco, green is Coast of Maine. So we'll start with the Coco Loco. And again, you guys will be able to see on the screen what the weight is actually showing as we're harvesting. So Rambo radish we either grow for 7 days or 10 days. We grow it for 7 days for our chefs, and we grow it for 10 days for our residential. The one thing we have noticed over the years is that if we harvest Rambo radish with Coco Loco, it tends to pull the roots out pretty easily. So we'll see if that's any different in Sprout Island. Wish you guys could feel how sharp this knife is. As you can see, that's what I was talking about. We'll pluck that right off. Okay, I'd say that's good enough. So it looks like we are at 10.96 ounces. Did it just change on me? 10.9, it's bouncing back and forth between 10.96 and 10.98. So that's for the Fox Farms. So let's go ahead and grab the Sprout Island, coast of Maine. I will say the base of the coast of Maine feels more solid. I know it sounds weird, but it just feels like it's more of a solid mat than kind of a movable object. So I'd be curious to see what the difference in the root structure looks like after we get this one done too. Okay, I'd pretty much call that done. So it looks like we were at 13.06. That's a pretty significant difference. So that's about a 3 ounce increase in yield. So I'll put the percentages up on the screen. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'm not gonna do the math on the fly. So that's Rambo radish. Let's see what the root structure looks like. Okay, so let's take a look at what the roots look like on the coast of Maine, Sprout Island. I'm hoping I'll be able to pull this whole thing up in one shot here without tearing it apart. I'll just pull it back and kind of fold it like that. See if I'll be able to do the same with the Coco Loco or not. It's definitely more loose. I'd say again, the advantage is probably to the coast of Maine, Sprout Island. You can see the roots are a little bit thicker throughout the whole thing. The soil definitely holds together a little bit better. Other than this one piece that got stuck here, I can probably pull this whole mat right out as well if I had to take a guess without it coming apart. So as you can see, you can pick that right up. That's pretty amazing, actually. You usually can't do that with Rambo radish. Let's see if we can do it with the Fox Farms. Yeah, see, it's already split in half. See if we can do it with the remainder of it. Yep, so it's not too bad. But definitely in comparison overall, I would say that the coast of Maine definitely has the thicker of the two root structures for sure. So beat it in weight and root structure. All right, last but not least, in our 10-day harvest comparison between Coco Loco from Fox Farm and Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend is broccoli. So let's see what our weight differences are. So we'll start with Fox Farm Coco Loco. Again, we've harvested this many, many times. Nothing new for us for Fox Farm. We've been using them for 3.5 years. We started out with regular cocoa coir when we first started, and we were using ocean solution, and quickly realized that that was a lot of work once you started getting a decent sized farm to mix up the ocean solution, break apart the cocoa coir every single day. It just got to be way too much work, so we sacrificed the time for the extra money to buy bags of soil instead. And that has paid off in dividends. So much faster. Okay. So our final total for Fox Farm Coco Loco is 8.62. That's right around where we usually are. We're usually between 8 and 9 ounces typically. So move this one out of the way. We'll tear out our scale here. So 8.62. And we'll go ahead and do Sprout Island. And again, I can definitely feel that this is just got a stronger base to it. When you pull it up, it doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart. It feels like it's going to stay together. I think we'll see that when we compare the root structures. Okay, that's about it for that tray. And it looks like we are at 8.56, so it's very, very close. So in comparison, there's basically zero difference between the two for weight. So let's take a look at the root structures. Well, you can definitely feel a difference when harvesting the Coast of Maine versus the Fox Farm Coco Loco in the fact that the Coast of Maine just feels more solid, feels like the root structure is stronger. So let's see if that's the case with broccoli as well. So we're gonna kind of slowly pull up this corner here, see if we can get under it. Try to peel it out of there as one big piece. And so far so good. Let's see if we can do the same with the Fox Farm. I'd be surprised if we can. I'll start from this end. It seems like it's a little more solid. This one typically falls apart on us with broccoli. I'm gonna make an attempt at it though, but I can't make any promises. I might be able to get some of it, but I don't think it's gonna get all of it. I can feel it falling apart already. Oh. Okay, well, we were able to get it at least flipped over. So I would say in the comparison between these two, they're pretty similar. I feel like the Coast of Maine definitely kind of reached a little bit further, so the roots go all the way to the edges, versus the Fox Farm where it kind of dies off on these two ends, especially this end down here. So definitely these are very, very similar in root structure. I would say though, it's definitely a win to Coast of Maine as far as root structure goes. Okay, so that wraps up our 10-day grows for broccoli, cantaloupe, and Rambo radish. So next we'll see you in 4 days where we're gonna harvest our 14-day crops. Okay, so we're back on day 13. I know originally I said it was gonna be day 14, but I'm actually gonna be out of town tomorrow, so I have to harvest these today as part of this video. So we're gonna give you some updates on some things that are still growing, like the basil and the celery. I'm gonna show you a couple things that we had some issues that we're gonna start actually replanting again, and we'll get into some of the harvesting weights for the ones that actually made it through the 13 days so far. So let's get into it. All right, so before we begin, let's talk about some of the ones that we actually had problems with. A couple were the arugula, which in the Fox Farms actually grew perfectly fine, as you can see. It looks really, really good. The Coast of Maine, Sprout Island, unfortunately, we did have some damping off, as you can see. So I think partly that is just us getting used to watering this soil. So I'm not gonna harvest these two. We're actually gonna plant new versions until we get actually a true comparison between the two. So we're gonna skip these, and we're also gonna skip the Amaranth as well. We ran into the same problem. It should surprise nobody that those two are incredibly water sensitive, and they were the ones that were problem children in this case. So same exact result. The Coast of Maine had a little bit of some damping off in it, but the Coco Loco performed perfectly. As you can see, the tray looks really good. So we're gonna plant these again as well, so we'll get a good solid actual review to make sure the weights are, comparable. Because in this case, if I didn't harvest that section, then obviously that's gonna cause this one to be less weight than it actually would be. So, and keep everything objective, we're gonna regrow these and the arugula, and then we'll come back when those are ready. So as always, you'll be able to see the scale the entire time I'm harvesting. You'll know the weights before I actually do. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with red Russian kale. Now these guys are looking a little sad because they haven't been watered yet today, so they're a little tall, they're starting to fall over, but it won't really affect the weights whatsoever. So we'll go ahead and get started on harvesting those. So this thing is zeroed out. You can see it starts at 0. I'll go ahead and start harvesting. Now again, you don't really have to grow kale to be 14 days. You can easily get away with it at probably 10 days. Again, we just grew it a little extra to figure out what the weight differences were gonna be kind of on the high end. So this isn't something you have to do for 2 weeks. And as throughout the video, the Coco Loco is in purple. The coast of Maine is in green. So this is the Coco Loco version of the kale. Usually for kale, we end up with around maybe 8 to 10 ounces out of a tray for Coco Loco. So that should be right around where we're gonna be for this. All right, so it looks pretty good. And we're at 10.82 ounces for the Coco Loco kale. Sorry for the weird switch in video. This is the same tray. The scale was giving me a hard time, so I had to manipulate it a little bit. So now we're gonna harvest the coast of Maine. So we had 10.82 for the Coco Loco. I'm seeing a little bit of moisture in this one versus the Coco Loco. So I think it's just a matter of us learning how to actually water it properly, because it doesn't seem like it takes as much water as the Coco Loco, which is kind of surprising. This one edge is definitely drying out pretty bad right through here along the one edge. Okay, let's take a look. 10.7, wow, very close. So 10.82 versus 10.7. So Coco Loco just barely squeezed out the win on this one, but not by much. I would call these more or less equal. Okay, next up is gonna be red acre cabbage. Let's see how they compare. This is a crop that usually grows really well for us. One of the easiest ones that we grow. It's always very happy. It's very hard to make it angry. It's very hard to overwater it. It's one we take to shows a lot because it always looks good. It's got the nice purple to it, but it usually doesn't give us any actual problems with growing it, so thankfully. It's pretty simple. Which, by the way, if you'd like to see an actual tour of our farm, we posted one recently to our YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it up here in this corner. With cabbage, we're usually between 8 and 10 ounces per tray, usually on the Coco Loco. All right, so final total for Coco Loco is going to be 8.70. 8.70. So let's go ahead and tear this out. There we go. It's giving me a hard time again. All right, now we'll do the coast of Maine red acre cabbage. This is reset to 0. This one is definitely less wet. I think overall, it's a little more uniform in the growth. So that one's done. So red acre cabbage out of the coast of Maine was at 9.18. So coast of Maine squeezed out a very tiny win there. I wouldn't say that's super significant, but it's definitely comparable at best to Fox Farm Coco Loco. Pretty cool. All right, next up on the list is gonna be purple kohlrabi. We'll go ahead and start with the Coco Loco. If you've never grown kohlrabi before, it doesn't have as much purple as the red acre cabbage. but it's also not quite as strong of a flavor as a red acre cabbage is. It's kind of a mild cabbage flavor. So some customers prefer this just because it doesn't quite overpower everything. So this should be roughly about the same, about 8 to 10 ounces. Usually get around 8. Between 8 and 9. It's probably very common. All right, so that'll do it for the kohlrabi out of the Coco Loco. We got 10.04, so that was a good tray. Had a decent amount of weight to it. So now we'll go ahead and do the coast of Maine. It's definitely more wet. There's a lot more undergrowth that I'm seeing, a lot of little stuff that's down towards the bottom. So if this weighs more, I think it's just because it's how wet it is. Which again, that's a problem for us to figure out. It may not be a coast of Maine issue as much as it is a watering issue on our side, because we're used to watering Coco Loco the way we've been doing it for 3.5 years. Okay, that's it for that tray. We're at 8.78, so wow, that's surprising. I would have thought for sure that tray would have weighed more than the Coco Loco because of how wet it was. So Coco Loco definitely takes a clear win on that one. All right, next on the list is going to be our Brassica Blend that we created in-house. Again, this is cabbage, kale, and kohlrabi mixed together. So we'll do the Coco Loco first. The really funny thing is the way we came up with this actual mix was we were selling kohlrabi, kale, and cabbage separately, which we still do, but we found that they were the bottom 3 sellers. So we actually created a mix with the 3 together, and it quickly became one of our more popular sellers. So you can even have bad varieties that aren't selling well to grocery stores or to people and mix them together and create a mix out of it and come up with a cool name for it, and you never know, people may buy it just because of that. So we sell a lot of this Brassica Blend every week now. And I literally just took 3 lemons that we mixed together and turned them into lemonade. It's got a really good cabbage flavor to it. This is actually one of my personal favorite ones out of all the ones that we grow. I'll eat this as a salad by itself. It's delicious. So usually about 8 to 10 ounces for this too. Should be roughly around there. All right, so we had 9.42 ounces for the Fox Farms. I think I figured out the trick with this thing. I think if I tear it out with nothing on it and then tear it again, it seems to cooperate a lot more. All right, so let's do the Coast of Maine Sprout Island version. And like I mentioned in some of the 10-day harvests, you can feel a clear difference between the strength of the soil. I know it sounds weird, but like this whole mat is solid. And I think that just translates to having a better root structure, which we'll get into. And I know it's probably not exciting footage watching me harvest, but I want you guys to see that this is being done from start to finish. It's all being done by me. Again, it's just for scientific purposes to make sure that you guys understand that we're trying to give you real good quality information here. Okay, that's about it for that tray. And that one is going to be at 8.764, keeps bouncing back and forth. So I don't remember what the other one was off the top of my head, so I'll have to go back and see, but I'll put the winner up on the screen. All right, last but not least on our 13-day harvest run is spicy salad mix. Go ahead and do the Coco Loco first. This is usually around 8 to 9 ounces for us, maybe 10 on a good tray. This is the spicy salad mix from True Leaf Market. You can obviously take the same seeds that they use in their mix and make your own if you choose to. If you want to mix it up a little bit, we just really find our customers really like this particular mix. But like I said before, we buy most of our seed from Greener Harvest Seeds or Mom's in Canada. They have the best seeds in the United States and in Canada, in my opinion. All right, as expected, 9.16 for the Coco Loco for spicy salad mix. Now we'll do the Coast of Maine. Gonna zero this out. All right, looks like we're at 9.18. I don't remember what the Coco Loco was off the top of my head, but I know they were pretty close. I want to say it was 9.16 or 9.6. So again, they're really, really tight in the race. I'll put the winner up on the screen. So one thing I accidentally forgot to film was my reaction to the root structure for each of the 14-day crops. As you can see here, clear as day, as always, the Coast of Maine Sprout Island Blend has a stronger root structure across the board for all the ones that we actually did this day. Obviously, if you like this kind of video and you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. This video took a very long time to make, as you can see. It was about probably 6 weeks worth of filming on and off, and then hours and hours, if not days, of editing to actually get this together. So we'd greatly appreciate that subscribe and like and share the video if you liked it. Here's the updated tally with the root structure scores. All right, guys, we're back here on day 21 of our comparison between Coco Loco from Fox Farm and Sprout Island Blend from Coast of Maine. Today we're going to be doing our basil comparisons, so let's get into that and see what the weights look like. All right, so we'll start off with the Fox Farms Coco Loco. As usual, you'll be able to actually see the weight on the scale as we're going through the process of harvesting. So we grow our basil in deep trays. These guys are a little over 3 weeks old at this point. They don't get very tall. You usually don't get a whole lot of weight out of basil, maybe 2 to 4 ounces on a good tray, maybe 5 sometimes. But I will say overall, the leaves on the Coco Loco definitely look bigger as a whole. Whether that translates to weight or not, I guess we'll find out. And we do sometimes grow our basil to 4 weeks instead of 3 weeks. Some of our chefs prefer it that way. All I know is that this is one of the crops that we definitely love having some leftovers, because we take these home and turn them into pestos and put them on pizza and all kinds of stuff. It's probably one of our favorite ones. Okay, I'd say that's about it for the Fox Farm Coco Loco. Looks like we're at 3.72, if I'm reading that correctly. Yep, 3.72 ounces from their tray. So we'll set that one off to the side. We're gonna zero out the scale, and then we'll do the Coast of Maine. Okay, the scale's been zeroed out. Let's see what the Coast of Maine gives us. Coast of Maine is definitely a little bit more wet, especially at the base. I'm really having to kind of pay more attention to get some of the added roots out. And basil is definitely a tougher one to harvest because it's so short, and you really have to be careful not to cut yourself and also not to get a whole lot of dirt on your knife. I think that's about as good as we're going to get. So that came out to be 3.02 ounces. So it was definitely an advantage to Coco Loco for sure. We ended up with an extra 0.7 ounces out of that tray versus the other. So let's flip them over and take a look at what the root structure looks like. All right, it'll be very unlikely that I can actually flip these over. Basil doesn't really have that much of a strong root structure, but we're gonna make an attempt, see how far we can get. So this will probably be a total disaster, but let's give it a try. Even if I get just a small chunk of it turned over, I'll be happy. Yep, I think we're gonna get much more than that. It's very loose. All right, so I'll definitely say that the coast of Maine appears to have more roots actually puncturing all the way through the soil bed. And I'll show you guys a close-up video what that looks like. But the soil definitely is still very, very, very loose overall. But this definitely feels a little bit more solid on the coast of Maine side. Just gonna try and roll it back another layer here. See what it looks like. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more solid, not too bad though. So I would probably give the advantage on this one to coast of Maine, but they lost in the weight challenge. All right, so the next time you're gonna see us is gonna be day 35 when we actually harvest our celery. That takes about 5 weeks for us. So we'll see you on day 35. Well, guys, we finally made it. This is week 5 of our comparison between Fox Farm Coco Loco and Coast of Maine Sprout Island. We have finally reached the end. This is our beautiful celery that we have here for both of these two. Again, the Coco Loco is in purple trays and the Coast of Maine is in the green tray. So let's get to harvesting and see what the weights look like. So as always, guys, you'll be able to see the actual weight that I'm loading into the bowl here as it's going along. So you'll see it before I do. So let me scoot the Coast of Maine version out of the way here and let's start harvesting up the Coco Loco. So right off the bat, just for comparison purposes, the Coco Loco definitely seems to be a darker green overall. Height-wise, the Coco Loco appears to be a little bit taller. It's kind of hard to tell, but it definitely looks like it's taller. The leaves seem to be a little bit more pronounced as well. So these are definitely a little more yellow, especially in the middle. So I don't know if that's just nutrients running out or what it is, but this is the first time we've used this for a long-term grow. So you're learning as we are. So maybe just on the edge of that 5-week time period. So let's go ahead and start harvesting this bad boy up. If you haven't grown celery before, it's extremely light. This whole entire tray may get us 2 to 3 ounces. And it's a 5-week grow, so you definitely want to charge accordingly for this stuff. It's very, 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 very thin, but it smells incredible. If you like the flavor of celery, this stuff is awesome. Very good. A lot of my chefs really love this one. As an option, of course, we charge accordingly. Make sure we're making up for our time that we spend on it and having to wait for it. Obviously, it takes up a lot of room on the shelves as you're letting it grow for 5 weeks. Now, you probably could get away with letting this grow for 4 weeks. We just prefer to have the bigger leaves on there. It just looks nicer. That 1 extra week isn't really going to kill you, but you could certainly get away with doing this for 4 weeks and it would be just as good. Okay, so it looks like about it for Coco Loco. And it looks like we ended up with, wow, 5.74 ounces. That's more than I thought it would be. These seeds do come from Greener Harvest. We really do like these actual seeds a lot. We were growing celery for a couple years with some bad seeds and didn't even realize it. And we thought we were really bad at it, but it turns out we just had bad seed. So these guys, we actually do plant in deep trays, as you can see. Because it's such a long-term grow, we want to make sure they have the extra soil and the nutrients that they need to get through that entire process. So let me reset this guy and we'll go ahead and see what the Coast of Maine gives us. All right, so the number we're comparing to is 5.74 ounces that came out of the Fox Farm Coco Loco. So let's see what we get from the Coast of Maine. We reset our scale to 0. Should be able to see that on the screen now. So let me go ahead and cut this bad boy and see what we got. Okay, I'd say that calls it for us. So let's see, we've got 5.74, exactly the same amount. Okay, well that's definitely interesting. I was not expecting that at all. I thought for sure the Coco Loco was gonna have more weight to it than the Sprout Island, so that's kind of incredible. But yeah, seems like they're pretty well even on that, so that's definitely clearly a tie. So we'll flip these over and see what the root structure looks like. All right, in general, celery doesn't have much of a root structure, so I'm not super hopeful on how easy this is gonna be to flip these, but we're gonna give it a try. It's been 5 weeks worth of growth, so there should be enough, hopefully enough root system in there to actually be able to hold the soil together, but only one way to find out. Let's get our hands dirty. So first I'm gonna start with the Fox Farm Coco Loco. Just try and get an edge started here if I can. At least flip over a section. I don't think I'll be able to pull too much more than that without it falling apart. It's definitely pretty loose, but that's pretty common with celery. Not really that much out of the ordinary. The coast of Maine's about the same. It's gonna definitely fall apart if I try and pick it up. And again, coast of Maine definitely has a thicker root structure. You can see the extra roots in here versus this guy over here. So they definitely seem to prefer across the board, the Coast of Maine Sprout Island blend to actually have the root structure develop really well. That's one thing we've seen pretty consistently, I believe, across all of them. So I would definitely say root structure wise, this is a win to Coast of Maine, but as far as how much we harvested, it was literally a tie.
Here are the final totals for our comparison. For germination in 7 days, Sprout Island came out on top. For roots, Sprout Island was the clear winner. And for harvest, Coco Loco just squeezed out the win. If you total all the scores from all categories, Sprout Island came out on top. But what's really interesting is despite losing the harvest competition, Sprout Island actually totaled more overall yield by a very small margin. Finally, here are the overall preferences for each crop variety.
All right, so that concludes our comparison between Fox Farm Coco Loco and Coast of Maine Sprout Island blend. You can see it was a very mixed bag of results from one side to the other. Coast of Maine across the board definitely had a better root structure. And for the most part, it had a better yield, but it was a couple times the Coco Loco definitely beat it out. For the most part, it seemed like Coast of Maine had a little bit taller plants, but it didn't really add up to a whole lot of additional yield when it boils down to it, but it was a little bit here and there. It's organic and they have a money back guarantee. That's definitely one big plus for the Coast of Maine Sprout Island blend. Coco Loco is definitely not organic. They're definitely not certified. And I don't think they have any kind of money back guarantee that I know of. But if you've used either one of these or both of these, let me know in the comments what your results look like and if you had any differences that you saw when you were actually testing yours out. If you want to see more videos like this, we plan on launching a lot more educational content this coming year. Just subscribe to the channel and that way you can keep notifications on and find out when we actually launch new videos to learn more about what we do. And we're going to try and do a better job about telling our story as we go through the process of building our farm up to the business we're hoping it can be. So if you want to follow along for that as well, feel free to subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to leave them down in the comment section. I do answer every single one. I look at every single one. As long as it doesn't blow up out of proportion, I try and keep up with them as best I can. So if you look at my other videos, you'll see the exact same thing. So hopefully that helped you guys out in making that decision. I will put affiliate links down to, into Amazon, but I would highly advise if you can buy them locally, you're going to save a lot more money than if you actually were to purchase them online. The shipping is just crazy expensive, unfortunately. So if you can find them at a local garden center or something near your house, definitely look for those two options. They're probably the two best out there as far as growing microgreens go. So definitely don't hesitate to look around and see if you can find either of those two. If you can buy them in bulk, even better. If you have that option, you know, that way you can get like a pallet at a time and save you some money. Definitely works out better that way. So good luck, guys. We appreciate you tuning in and stay until the end, and good luck with your grow. Thanks.